Welcome, everyone. I'm Dan Powers, Executive Director of the Society for Science and User Research Facilities, and we're having another session of our 2022 annual meeting. This time, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Richard Oram with the National Science Foundation's Large Facility Office. I'd asked Richard if he could speak to our network and describe the spectrum of resources and the kinds of activities and really the opportunities for scientists of all kinds to connect into the research resources that the National Science Foundation has, particularly in his realm of the Large Facilities Office. Let me give a little bit more background on Richard. He joined the Large Facilities Office just in April 2021 as an IPA rotator from Caltech Physics, Mathematics, and Astronomy Division. But he himself is a scientist, an engineering manager, and an educator with extensive experience with operations management of very large and complex facilities. He brings practical experience in program and project management, team building, and leadership of engineering teams in a multicultural and multilingual environment into world-class organizations. And I would say my experience with a large multilingual, multi-unit, large organization event was in September, which Richard had organized the workshop for the Large Facilities Office in Colorado, and the network of different agencies, scientists, projects that were spotlighted and highlighted there, the connections that were made, caused me to really want him to come to the SSURF network and describe what is going on, what are the opportunities there in the Large Facilities Office. I'll let him give a little bit more background as he sees fit, but let me welcome onto the screen Richard. And thanks, Richard. In addition to your presentation, if there's time, I can come back on as I did with prior sessions speakers, and we can have a conversation and take questions from the audience if they're there as well. But Richard, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate very much the invite and the opportunity to be here today. So I need to share my screen. So let me go ahead and do that. With a bit of luck, I'll press the right button. Okay, I believe I'm sharing it full screen. So what you should be seeing is what I'm going to talk about is an overview, as Dan mentioned, of the National Science Foundation's outreach activities to the major and mid-scale research infrastructure community. And let's see. What you should be seeing now, this is this graphic. It's obviously it's a map of the globe, kind of a bit distorted to get it on the screen, but it's a bit of an eye chart, but there should be, I think, 26 major facilities on this graphic that are NSF funded, ranging from the ground-based astronomy, that's all there on the left. And in my professional experience, I mostly worked in the ground-based astronomy arena. But one of the great things about being an IPA rotator is your narrow perspective gets broadened a hell of a lot, to the much wider spectrum of activities that are taking place. So you can see on this map, it ranges from the polar programs in the Antarctic and the Arctic to operating fleets of aircraft, to ships, submarines, deep sea drilling ships, various different state-of-the-art supercomputing centers. I won't go through this list, but I'm constantly amazed at the breadth and depth of activities that are in this portfolio. And these are just the major facilities. Another map that has the mid-scale research infrastructure on it. So outline for this presentation, three things, and they're all related to outreach activities. I'll give a bit of background and hopefully some forward-looking onto the research infrastructure workshops and webinars. that are hosted by the Large Facilities Office. I'll talk briefly on this web-based collaborative forum. It's a bit of a mouthful. We call it the Research Infrastructure Community of Interest Forum. And lastly, I'll give some bit of background and links to this the Research Infrastructure Knowledge Gateway, which you can browse that yourselves, and that's where where we have recordings of presentations and lessons learned and best practices from past workshops and past webinars there. So our webinars and workshops, probably no surprises there, but our goals are all about sharing knowledge and experiences and best practices, and having discussions on all the common challenges that come from the major and mid-scale facilities. Our other goals are discussing new initiatives, perhaps coming from the agency, and but very much the workshop is hoped to be and meant to be a one of engagement and a collaborative one. So we very much want these workshops to be forums where things are discussed, and we also get input back from the community. That's a really very important part of it. We also, our goals are to demonstrate the tools and techniques in things like project management and operations and business. So it's basically an opportunity for the community to share kind of things that they found useful and what's working for them. And lastly, expanding the goal of our community of practice and connecting colleagues, so they can share information, and they can actually help each other with like parallel kind of problems that they might be facing. So the intended audience our workshop, it's designed for professionals, and I think generally a professional is someone who is currently working in a role in developing, planning, or the construction phase, or perhaps operations and maintenance, or perhaps divestment of large complex research infrastructure. So in bullets there, I won't read them, but those are the type of professionals that we provide the workshop for. Giving a bit of context, this graphic here has some of the past workshop timeline. So there on the far left, the LFW, that's Large Facility Workshop of 2015. That was in San Juan, Puerto Rico, hosted by the Arecibo Observatory. And it's an annual workshop. So the next year was in Washington, DC, 2016, hosted by the Smithsonian Institution, which was a really amazing site. 2017, it was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, hosted by LIGO. I was operations manager at LIGO there at the time. And then following year, back to the DC area. It was in Alexandria, hosted by the NSF. And in 2019, it was at in Austin, Texas, hosted by the Texas Advanced Computing Center. So you can see from that graphic, the the location of the workshop tends to, in the past, has oscillated between a host facility and the DC area. So looking nearer in time. Now, unfortunately, the 2020 workshop had to be cancelled due to COVID at relatively short notice. And that's when we, to keep things going on, it was moved to a webinar format. So our first webinar in lieu of the workshop was in October 2020. A bit more on how those webinars are put together later. And 2021, the COVID continued, and we continued with our webinar format with an attempt to put on a webinar about once a quarter there. And as Dan mentioned, we were able to put on our first hybrid workshop just this September in Boulder, Colorado. And that was the co-hosts for that were NCAR, Gauge, NEON, and the National Solar Observatory. And more on that later. So going forward, we are planning our next hybrid workshop. I think the vision is that we're going to continue doing hybrid workshops, because I guess we've got over the anxiety a bit and learned a bit more about how to do it, how to pull it off. The next workshop is going to be in the Washington, D.C. area, and in May 2023. It hasn't quite landed yet. And then looking ahead to 2024, it's still to be determined. We've got some ideas about a host and a location, but it's not firmed up yet. Perhaps I'd like to note that the name, you may notice the name change. We subtly moved from large facility workshop to research infrastructure workshop, because it was a better description of the community there and those activities. That research infrastructure includes the major facilities and the mid-scale facilities also. Let's see. Well, that's a bit of an eye chart, but these are some of the recent webinars that we've hosted. Generally, we get around range. You can see there about 110 to about 240 participants at these webinars. The ones done in 2022. You can see the topics there, and these kind of cover how do we select these topics? You might be asking. Usually, it's timely, based upon some changes to like terms and conditions or policies that we're aware of, or what are currently topics of interest that have been suggested. We have an internal, well, actually it's an internal and external working group of volunteers where we get input from the research and infrastructure community about what are the types of topics that would be of interest, and that's really very important. So I'm just highlighting here again some of the webinars. These are cut and paste from our knowledge sharing gateway. So if you go to the knowledge sharing gateway, you can click on this button here and download the presentation. If you click on the video button, you can watch the video of these presentations. I think it's well worth it. Gives you an idea of the type of topics that quite often it's a panel discussion. Generally, it's with the panelists are sort of PIs or co-PIs. director level staff or senior scientists. So we had it's an interesting webinar all about metrics, and have a panel discussion on best practices for developing performance metrics, and also another panel on best practices for science impact metrics. I would encourage you all to go and watch the video of these presentations. It's pretty interesting stuff. We do seem to lean towards the cyber infrastructure and cyber security, perhaps highlighting the importance there, because obviously all of the one thing that all of our facilities and research infrastructure have in common is the collection of data and the sharing of data. So moving to our most recent workshop, which was in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. There's a couple of images there. The main workshop took place at NCARS, so the National Center for Atmospheric Research, their Center Green campus. We had a 3-day workshop there. And then following that, on the Friday, we had a 4 half-day, we call them specialty workshops, and that was a slightly different location in NCAR's Mesa Lab. So by the numbers, we had 489 attendees at this event. I love that image there. This actually shows the this was taken as part of the sort of group photograph of all the attendees, and it demonstrates the excellent collaboration and teamwork that it takes to pull off one of these successful events. And the attendees here are all tossing balls to each other. Actually, they're little globes there, sort of demonstrating their willingness to collaborate. So as I mentioned, a metric of success, I think, for us is we had all of the 26 major facilities were represented, most of them in person, and if not virtually. We had a fairly dense agenda for this workshop. We had 38 sessions with 48 separate topics, and organized into 5 tracks identified there. As I mentioned, we had these 4 half-day specialty workshops. The cyber infrastructure workshop there in the morning, that was organized by CI Compass, who is NSF's Center of Excellence in Cyber Infrastructure. And then the afternoon workshop was organized by Trusted CI, who is NSF Center of Excellence in cybersecurity. We also had our inaugural safety officer workshop that was facilitated by the Large Facilities Office, and we're planning to do some more of the safety officer workshops in the future. And then the Division of Astronomy organized a science communication workshop. One highlight of these events, I've highlighted there in red, are the facility tours of the host facilities. I think that's always a highlight, and those were really very well received. So in terms of summarizing sort of impact by the numbers, we had 100% of major facilities were represented. We had about 179 more attendees at this workshop compared to the 2019 one. And bottom left, there's 63 PDUs, that's professional development units, were awarded to project management professionals on our program and project management track. because NSF is now an authorized training partner with the PMI, the Project Management Institute. So pie chart of attendee data by position type. See, it covers most of the disciplines that we're hoping to reach. Same for the virtual data. So complexity of putting it on, and I mentioned the collaboration part. So we had overall 119 speakers and panelists overall, broken down by I think around about 20 NSF staff speaking and 40 from the major facility staff, which means the rest were from either mid-scale facilities or other government facilities or other government agencies, or perhaps other subject matter experts from industry. I'll briefly mention that it was our first hybrid workshop, so we had some a little bit of anxiety, perhaps about how well that would be integrated together. We use an event platform called Hoover. That's a cut and paste of that, what the attendees would see on their app. It ended up being very successful, provided us with quite a bit of data with regard to what was of most interest and what was of less interest. At this workshop, for the first time, we also we put together and encouraged people to bring along posters as part of the overall the benefit of collaboration. It was a first for us. I think we had 23 virtual posters and 26 in-person posters. So we're definitely planning to grow this and keep this keep this in future workshops. Also, as well as posters, we had a number of tabletops. Mostly the tabletops, well, all the tabletops were from NSF staff, and there were opportunities there for attendees to organize a meeting and ask questions of subject matter experts from the NSF on particular topics. And we're certainly going to plan to do that, more of that in the future. So that's the workshop and the webinars. As I mentioned, I'd like to tell you about, promote our research infrastructure community of interest forum. This was kicked off probably just before the pandemic, and it still has opportunities, I think, to grow and become useful. But the goal of this, similar to the workshop, is to provide a forum, a virtual forum, to share best practices and lessons learned, connect colleagues, and promote collaboration. So that's what it looks like. If you put in research infrastructure outreach into your search engine, you should be led to a page that looks like this, and click on communities of interest. And a couple of things. You can watch this video, which kind of explains how it works, or if you just want to explore, you can click on request to join, and it's really pretty simple. You can put in very small amount of information about who you are and your email and what you're interested in and what community you're interested in joining. And then when you do, you'll have access to these features there on the portal. So there's regular announcements going on. There's featured videos each week. We have a page for career opportunities for professional staff and internships. We have an events calendar, and then we also have these nine communities of interest. And you see, so this has grown. So grown enough that we have these 9 separate communities of interest. You can join all of them if you wish, but the notion is there is you're in control of the kind of information that you want to you wish to receive and connect with. And then finally, I've already mentioned the NSF's Research Infrastructure Knowledge Gateway, which is a portal again for sharing best practices and lessons learned. If you follow the links there, you can Google Research Infrastructure Outreach, and you'll see all of the session recordings from 2022 are posted there, as also they're posted on the community of interest portal. So with that, I'd say thanks for the opportunity to discuss with you, and I hope to see you at a future webinar or workshop that's coming soon. Thanks, Dan. You're muted, Dan. Dan, I can't hear you, Dan, I'm afraid.
How about now?
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Sorry. I grabbed the microphone and cut myself off. I was giving you such glowing accolades and thanks there. But seriously, with these different ways of getting detail and data on the different types of research facilities and the projects going on, one aspect that caught my attention was you had mentioned with the workshops and also the communities of interest there, that there's an intention to be receiving input from the various stakeholders that join in. Could you give us some examples of what you've been hearing in 2022 as to sort of concerns or suggestions, or what kind of input is it that you're getting?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very varied. So, I mean, for example, at the workshops, and the webinars, you know, there's always a survey that goes out for attendees, but very much on our workshops, we receive input and ideas that range from, I didn't quite understand this, and I would like to speak with someone who I can ask questions to. So we make an attempt then to connect those people with a subject matter expert from the NSF, right? And that can be on a wide range of things. Probably maybe picking on a topic. There was an excellent presentation on the Build America, Buy America Act and how that was going to affect the future construction of and operations of facilities. So there were a lot of questions related to that. We were somewhat prepared for that because the Build America, Buy America experts had come with a tabletop display and posters and that kind of thing in order to help answer those questions. So each one of those 48 sessions, we got questions on, and then with an attempt to follow up. There's many of the suggestions are on the lines of the perspective of this would be a useful and interesting thing to discuss, next time at a next workshop, or there might have been, not enough attention put on some nuanced part of their of a topic. So what we attempt to do there is, take that back and try and figure out what the next step would be, in order to satisfy that. So I don't want to display my own particular bias on what I there, because I don't think that would be fair.
Okay. Let me ask you this. It could just provide also some context for scientists who may not have engaged with the NSF yet, is just the distinction between a large and a mid-sized facility, and perhaps the type of technologies that are in either of those entities.
Well, from my understanding, it's generally a dollar value distinction. So a major facility is one that exceeds the threshold of $100 million in the construction phase, and whereas mid-scale are in the range of $4 million to $100 million.
All right. Would that be in terms of construction costs you're describing, not necessarily annual budget?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like yes, simply put, there probably is a more complicated formula than that, but that's my basic understanding of it.
Okay. The map that you have behind you there with all those different facilities, and I was aware of some of course, the projects that were highlighted at the fall workshop. Could you describe something that is almost one of the newer upgrades, or perhaps an iteration or an evolution of some technology that you think the research community should really be aware of, that is just on that sort of cutting edge of technology that we're fortunate to have here in the United States?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll attempt to do that. I mean, I think the most recent facility that's been constructed and is now transitioning into operations is the Daniel K. Inouye solar telescope on Maui, which I think is going to tell us kind of the more about our star, the sun, than we ever had access to before. And I think my background's in the ground-based astronomy, and I think some of the technology employed there to actually build that mirror and keep it operating and cool it and that kind of thing, to me is an extraordinary effort.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that's going on is the what used to be called the LSST, the Large Synaptic Survey Telescope. Is now, it's been recently renamed in the last I think 2 years to named after Vera Rubin. It's called the Rubin Observatory, and that's in Sierra Pachon in Chile, and that facility is going to be up and operating shortly. Well, maybe a couple of years, I don't know. But it's that's also going to, I think, be amazing, because it's going to be operating for it has a 10-year mission, to survey the sky in the southern hemisphere and look for changes in it, and the amount of data that it's going to be collecting is a new benchmark, I think, for the National Science Foundation. So looking forward to that coming online. I think I can only talk about the things that are currently, in the construction phase, and not the sort of planning phase. So there's other exciting things going on, but I don't feel like I can talk about those.
All right. Well, thanks, Richard, for getting these resources on people's radar for further investigation, particularly all those communities of interest. I think there's no one who would be left out if they were to go through those different aspects of the communities and find where the match is with their type of research, the stage of their career, the type of projects that they would like to be at least aware of, if not actually evolving their career into. That's what I see as many of the benefits of those different communities of interest there, and the ability to share a given person's expertise and ideas amongst a network of colleagues and a relevant cohort is a really great resource. Yeah, so I'd encourage
I think so too. I mean, no matter where you're at in your career, like if you're just starting out and you're put in a position of saying, you need, can you figure out how to do this, and you don't know how to do it? Well, there's people in the community, that community of interest, that you could ask, and say, well, can you give me some pointers there? And I think I'm looking forward to that taking off and really become a valuable resource there.
All right. Yes. Well, I'll look to connect with you again, and we can have further conversations to perhaps focus on a given community segment and what their ideas are, what kind of conversation that they would like to continue to foster. That's a way that the NSF network and SSURF network can be a resource for each other.
Well, so, yeah. Well, one other thing I'd mention, if any of your community have ideas about offering to like host and partner up for a future NSF workshop, I'd be most interested to hear about that, and ideas about webinar topics. I'd like to hear about them directly, and maybe we can make that happen.
Okay, this is good. You should know we are looking to have more in-person gatherings for SSURF in 2023, and it occurs to me as we're looking at site visits with given facilities that the communities there could be a community of interest that has a geographic concentration, or at least the ability to gather in a hybrid sense. And we could look to combine what is both an on-site facility visit with the outreach to those given segments of the communities of interest that the NSF has.
Yeah,
there's some more collaboration and ability to convene these thought leaders that is an opportunity for us to both to pursue.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Well, then thanks for this session, Richard. And thanks everyone for joining us for this overview from the National Science Foundation. We'll have another session starting up in just a few minutes.